On the eve of the International Women's Day, the Palestinian Central Statistics Office revealed that the Israeli occupation army have killed more than 9,000 women in 5 months of genocidal operations in Gaza. In Haiti, political tensions increase as human rights organizations highlight that more than 15,000 people have been displaced in the Haitian capital due to the increase of violence. And in the United States, the governor of New York has deployed the National Guard in the subway premises in an attempt to face the uncontrolled rise of violence in the city. Hello and welcome to From the South. My name is Belén de los Santos, and from the TeleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba, we begin with the news. On Thursday, on the eve of the International Women's Day, the Palestinian Central Statistics Office revealed that the Israeli occupation army has killed more than 9,000 women in 5 months of genocidal operations in Gaza. In this sense, the report highlighted that until October 7, 2023, women made up 49% of the Palestinian population. Therefore, in the statistics of the genocide, a large number of women are reported as dead and injured. On the other hand, the Ministry of Health added that 75% of the total injured from the aggression are women, followed by children. In this sense, it should be noted that women and children also make up the 70% of those who are missing, most likely under the rubble. In this way, humanitarian organizations and recently also the President of Brazil, Lula da Silva, have denounced that this is a war of Zionism against women and children. At least 6 Palestinians were killed on Wednesday in Israeli airstrikes and shooting targets civilians and their homes in the central Gaza Strip, according to local and medical sources. Additionally, an Israeli shelling targeting a house sheltering displaced people, predominantly women and children, west of Nuseirat refugee camp in the central Gaza Strip, resulted in 5 civilian deaths and several other injured. In the meantime, another Palestinian was also killed and 9 were wounded when the Israeli military fired at civilians waiting for aid near the Kuwaiti roundabout south of the Gaza city. The injured were transported to the Al-Shifa medical complex. Earlier, 4 Palestinians were killed and over 20 others were injured when the Israeli occupation forces opened machine gun fire on civilians desperately waiting for aid trucks at the Nablusi roundabout west of Gaza City. At least 7 civilians were killed and others wounded after the Israeli occupation army opened fire on groups of citizens near the Wadi Gaza bridge in central Gaza. Medical sources reported that Israeli warplanes also targeted multiple homes in the Al Zaytun neighborhood southeast of Gaza City. On the other hand, Israeli fighter jets carried out intense airstrikes that targeted the Curtain factory area, the Kuwait roundabout, and the Al-Sika street south of the neighborhood. Furthermore, Israeli occupation artillery struck with 10 missiles several homes in the Sheikh Al-Hain and Tal Al-Wa neighborhood southwest of Gaza City. The strike resulted in the injury of dozens of civilians, mostly children and also women. Jordan condemned on Wednesday the Israeli government's ongoing settlement plans in the occupied Palestinian territories. The condemnation by Jordan's Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Expatriates came after the Israeli government's decision to approve the construction of approximately 3,500 new settlement units in the West Bank. The ministry stated that these unilateral and illegal measures violate international law, including Security Council Resolution number 2334 and other relevant international references. It also emphasized that such actions undermine the prospects for peace and the establishment of an independent Palestinian state with East Jerusalem as its capital. The ministry reiterated that the call for international community to fulfill its responsibilities by halting these ongoing violations of international law, underscoring the urgent need for international protection for the Palestinian people, especially with the approach of the month of Ramadan. South Africa asked the International Court of Justice to order additional emergency measures against Israel in response to the latter's breach of the measures already in place. In a statement issued today, the South African presidency warned that the desperate people of Gaza cannot wait anymore. Pretoria also asked the court to order that Israel take immediate and effective measures to enable the provision of urgently needed basic and services and humanitarian assistance to address famine and starvation in the region. On December 29, 2023, South Africa filed a lawsuit against Israel citing its involvement in acts of genocide against the Palestinian people in the Gaza Strip, a move that was supported by dozens of countries, marking a historic precedent in the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. The United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestinian Refugees in the Near East, the UNRWA, has described the food shortage in Gaza as a nutritional crisis and part of a wider humanitarian catastrophe. UNRWA spokeswoman Tamara Al-Rifai said that from Cairo that the situation is so dire and the desperation so high that any truck crossing becomes an attraction for the hungry. According to Al-Rifai, 90% of the population in Gaza faces a high level of acute food insecurity. She also said that northern Gaza has been a real challenge accessing it. The UNRWA spokeswoman added that Israeli authorities have rejected more than half of UN's requests to bring food and medical supplies and also clean water to the north, and the association has not been allowed to reach the area since January 23rd. At least 30,717 Palestinians have been killed and 72,156 have been wounded in Israeli attacks in Gaza since October 7th. Now let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at TeleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. Other stories coming up, stay with us. Welcome back from the South. On Thursday, human rights organizations highlighted that more than 15,000 people have been displaced in the Haitian capital due to the increase of violence in the country. Local sources warn that criminal groups with U.S. ammunition are on the verge of what could be a civil war. On the other hand, they also pointed out that the government in office is disqualified by these criminal groups, while the Prime Minister is in Puerto Rico by decision of the State Department in Washington after the Dominican Republic rejected his entry into the country. In this sense, regional organizations have also failed to make progress in de-escalating a situation that has caused locals to wander around the capital to save their lives without food and without security. In this regard, medical sources also reported about the Andrés Manuel López Obrador indicated that the investigation on the 43 disappeared students of Ayotzinapa are progressing and will meet in the coming days with the families of the students. During his morning conference, the head of state condemned the actions of human rights advisors and organizations in the Ayotzinapa case as provocations. In addition, the head of state warned the relatives about manipulations in the Inter-American Commission of the American States Organization and by right-wing groups supported by foreign governments. Likewise, he emphasized that the government is exerting efforts to clarify the case of the 43 disappeared students and find their whereabouts.
To tell the parents that we are dedicated and that we are making a lot of progress in research But what is happening is being manipulated by the group headed by Alvarez y Gaza, the Inter-American Commission of Human Rights of the OAS, right-wing conservative groups supported by foreign governments.
Venezuela rejected the extension of the executive order being used by the United States government since the year 2015 to justify its aggression against the Bolivarian nation. In a statement released by the Foreign Ministry, Caracas pointed out that this order violates all norms of international law. It also affirms that the decision demonstrates that the declining leadership of the United States is not capable of designing a coherent foreign policy that is not based on economic terrorism, blackmail, or disrespect. On the other hand, the Bolivarian government stressed that the Venezuelan people will not bow down in the face of these aggressions and that their morale, conscience, and perseverance are the solid base on which they will continue to achieve victories. The Peruvian parliament approved, with the support of the right-wing benches, the return to bicameralism and the immediate election of congressmen. With 91 votes in favor, the full Congress approved in a second round of votes on Wednesday the reinstatement of the upper and lower chambers after 3 decades. The new legislature will be made up of 130 deputies and 60 senators for a period of 5 years and with immediate re-election. The decision will be effected after elections of the year 2026. With such a ruling, Congress disobeys the result of the popular referendum held in the year 2018 that rejected the return to bicameralism. Also in Peru, President Dina Boluarte on Wednesday appointed a center-right diplomat as her new prime minister after his predecessor resigned amid a scandal in which he allegedly gave favors to a love interest. The lawyer Gustavo Adriansen takes over from Alberto Otarola, who quit on Tuesday after the release of audio recordings in which he allegedly lovingly addresses a young woman who snapped up 2 government contracts. The 57-year-old Adriansen previously served as Peru's representatives to the Organization of American States in Washington. The president of Brazil, Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, congratulated the government of Venezuela on the announcement of the date of the presidential elections. The Brazilian president, during a meeting with Spanish President Pedro Sanchez, stressed that Venezuela needs a democratic election to regain a space for participation in world forums. The head of state gave a message to the Venezuelan opposition and urged them not to imitate the Brazilian opposition, which usually denies electoral processes, in a clear allusion to Bolsonarismo. Lula made reference to the extreme right-wing leadership in naming a substitute to participate in the presidential elections.
I just told you that here in this country they prevented me from participating in the 2018 elections. And instead of crying, I nominated another candidate to participate in the elections. In Venezuela, the elections are scheduled for July the 28th. I learned about that yesterday. Now, your question is whether the elections will be honest or not. I hope the elections will be as democratic as possible. And according to what President Maduro told me at the meeting in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, he will summon all the observers of the world that want to observe the electoral process in Venezuela.
In other news, Argentina's integral medical assistance program is the one that suffers the most damage from the measures imposed by the government of Javier Milei. Pensions and benefits for retirees are the 2 items with the largest drop in public spending by the government so far this year. The total amount of the cuts made by the government of Javier Milei in both items amounts to 1,682 million Argentine pesos. The Argentinian Institute of Fiscal Analysis stated that the collapse of real spending on pensions could be halted with exemptions, tax benefits, and sources of financing that guarantee fiscal balance. We have a final short break coming up, but before we invite you to join our WhatsApp community for our English-speaking audience, You can scan the QR code on screen to join directly and also share the link to reach more people. Constant news coverage of Latin America and the Caribbean, as well as the rest of the world. Stay connected and informed with TeleSUR. Final short break, don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. In the United States, the governor of New York, Kathy Hochul, has deployed the National Guard in the subway premises in an attempt to face the uncontrolled rise of violence in the city. The Democrat representative ordered the operation with 750 members of the National Guard, in addition to police and Metropolitan Transportation Authority agents. From now on, general searches, suitcase controls, identity checks, and other inquiry actions will be established for the users. Officers wearing powerful weapons are displaced in front of the entrances and exits of the facility. The decision, according to the governor's office, has been precipitated by the last shootings reported in the New York subway. In this frame, let's also recall that the metro service is one of the main transportation means of New Yorkers. We go to Italy, where more than 29,000 people were reported missing in the year 2023. Of them, almost 22,000 are minors and over 17,000 are foreign children. The Office of the Extraordinary Commissioner for Missing People warned that 75% of the cases are people under 18 years of age. They also reported that the foreign minors came from Tunisia, Egypt, Guinea, Ivory Coast, and Afghanistan. On the other hand, the authorities warned that a significant number of these missing children joined the ranks of criminal organizations, are victims of human trafficking or organ smuggling. The foreign ministers of Russia and Nigeria met in Moscow to discuss future relations between the two countries. After the meeting, Nigerian Chancellor Yusuf Tugar detailed that the relationship between the two nations will continue to grow. Similarly, Tugar assured that his country is in a suitable position to have a strategic relationship with Moscow. For his part, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said that Nigeria is a priority partner for Russia in the African continent. Likewise, Lavrov confirmed that Moscow will continue to provide assistance to the countries of the Sahara region and the Sahel.
Russia is making and in any case will continue to make a constructive contribution to the efforts of the Africans and the entire world community to stabilize the situation in the Sahara-Sahel region. It will provide assistance to the countries of the region to increase the combat capability of their national armed forces, to their security forces, and to the law enforcement authorities in order to counter the threats they still face.
China affirmed on Wednesday about the increase of tensions in the South Sea due to the violation of territorial sovereignty by the Philippines. Through Channel spokesperson Mao Ning, the Asian nation accused the Philippines of violating sovereignty and asserted that this led to the collision of ships from both countries in the Southern Sea. China asserted that sovereignty in these waters are historical and have been established according to international law, endorsed by the Charter of the United Nations. The diplomatic also added that the United States is using the Philippines in the Southern Sea to increase the hostilities between both Asian nations that have increased since the beginning of the term of office of new president backed by the United States. Senegalese parliament passed on Wednesday an amnesty-covering act linked to deadly protests in the last 3 years. The controversial text was approved with 94 votes in favor and 49 against, and is aimed at calming the crisis sparked by the presidential elections delayed in the country. The law has faced criticism that it is shielding perpetrators of serious crimes, including homicides. The amnesty is part of President Macky Sall's response to the turmoil sparked by his last-minute postponement of presidential elections, originally scheduled for February 25th. The law would grant an amnesty for all offenses or crimes, whether tried or not, committed between February 1st, 2021 and February 25th, 2024, related to demonstrations or having political motivations. And like this, we have come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also join us on social media. We are on Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and also TikTok. For TeleSUR English, my name is Belén de los Santos. Thank you for watching.